Hello, and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast number 1728. The topic is Q&A, and the title is Conceptual Programming, Set Intensity Sequence. So one of my business coaching clients is a personal trainer, and we were talking through some overall schemes and methods and programming structures they can use for their clients. The intention of the conversation was to streamline for them how to create client programming, whether that's creating it ahead of time, writing it out and sending it to them, or just how they would think on the fly to create workouts for their clients. They have some clients that work out when they're not together, therefore they write them ideas and workouts to do. And then some clients where they only work out when they're together. So they kind of like make them up as they go. And they just want to learn more ways, learn more concepts. And the idea is to create better and better programming, but to be able to do it with less and less work. So that's the idea. So we were talking about a general concept, so we're going to call that a conceptual program concept. The idea of like conceptual programming means is you learn concepts and then learn how to apply those per person rather than black and white rules, and then all of a sudden, it doesn't quite work with everybody and you don't know what to do in certain situations. The idea of conceptual programming is you learn concepts and then you learn to apply those in all situations. And we were talking about set intensity sequence. So when they were going through exercises with their clients, how should they focus on the intensity and even the intent of each exercise in the workout? We broke it down to thinking of kind of 4 general categories. Sometimes they'll do 4 exercises with the client. Sometimes they maybe do 3. So maybe one of these concepts they kind of split, into one exercise. You'll see, for example, we have like priming, pre-exhaust, intensity. Then we have a strength progression, then an intensity progression, and then a finishing set. So those could be the 4 categories we're going to talk through. And you might find, maybe the second exercise, you're only going to do 3 exercises with them for this like certain body part. So maybe the second exercise, you combine both the strength progression and the intensity progression. So we'll talk about that in a second. But the idea is we learn these concepts and then we learn how to apply them to each individual. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about 4 intensities that we can use. I'm going to describe them in the sense of using 4 exercises. But you can put a couple exercises in each category. Like I said, you can combine them. You can kind of play with it however you want. But the first concept that we want to do when we look at like the progression throughout the workout, what do I focus on the first exercise? Then maybe the middle exercises, then the last exercise. Well, the first exercise, we want to focus on what's called priming and or pre-exhaust. To learn more about that, because I'm going to explain it here in a second, but to learn more about that, we do have podcast number 334, and you can find all of our podcasts on our website, www.brutalirongym.com. Under the player on the homepage, the podcast player, there's instructions on how to find older podcasts, whether you're on a mobile device or a laptop. So you can find podcast 334 if you use that search concept that we described. So in podcast 334, we talk about this in greater details. But the idea of priming or pre-exhaust is if I want to focus on, say, a specific muscle like chest. When I'm doing the workout, I want to make sure that my chest is getting the greatest degree of focus, the greatest degree of damage, rather than my front shoulders and my triceps, or just, crazy technique. Gosh, who knows, buddy, just person squirming and wiggling around and they're not working the right muscle. We want to make sure that the intended muscle, the target muscle, gets the bulk of the focus and the damage. The idea of a priming or pre-exhaust is that you're giving an opportunity for your mind to find and focus on that targeted muscle. This is especially important with beginners and intermediates, and even advanced athletes. They're always going to be working within the concept of mind-muscle connection, so they're just kind of continuing that as they go. But if you don't have mind-muscle connection yet, this is really, really important. So I've trained clients before where they'll say, hey, I want to grow my chest, but I never seem to be sore after my workouts. I can never really feel my chest. Or somebody says, I want to be able to grow my back, but I can never feel my back. I always feel my biceps or my forearms. They'll explain that they have trouble feeling the intended muscle. So doing priming and pre-exhaust exercises helps kind of address that and fix that. The benefits is that mind-muscle connection, and you will increase fiber recruitment, muscle fiber recruitment in the targeted muscle by having a better mind-muscle connection and having a better kind of pump and kind of pre-stimulus into the targeted muscle. The idea of this is you would do anywhere from like 2 to 4 sets. Sometimes I'll do, 2-3 warm-ups and then one top set, where I increase the intensity per warm-up to where the last warm-up is arguably a working set. Or you'll do up to like 4 sets, so maybe you do 1 quick warm-up and then you do 3 to 4 kind of harder intensity. The total number of sets kind of depends on the length of the workout that you have, the experience of that individual person, and just kind of what feels productive. Maybe you think you're going to do 3 sets, but after the second set you're like, gosh, it's fried. It feels like I got everything I could out of that. The next set, it just feels like I'm exhausted or I'm not going to get as much or good quality. Then don't do it. You can also just play with it. Maybe you do this workout, just 2 sets. The next workout, you're like, I wasn't as sore as I thought I was going to be, so maybe I'll add a 3rd set. So you play with it a little bit, but usually it's somewhere between 2 to 4 working sets. And you want somewhere between 20 to 40 seconds of time under tension. Sometimes I've gone as high as 60 seconds of time under tension, but that's for very strong people. So we start out really light and I make them go longer time under tension, so that way we don't overly stress the joints and we don't overly wear out their explosive strength. If somebody's not very strong, we tend to go to the lower end of the range, so that way the weight load is heavy enough that they can actually feel it. So if I'm doing, cable flies to try to feel my chest, but I have 5 pounds, I'm not going to feel anything because it's too light. So you have to play around with it a little bit under that time under tension. But the idea is you're not doing a 5-rep max, but you're also not doing 1,000 reps where nothing feels challenging. So 20 to 40 seconds of time under tension. Now, it depends on the person, depends on the exercise, how many reps that might be. That could be 10 reps, 15 reps, 20 reps. It's going to be somewhere probably within that range, but you are more so interested in time under tension because that's a dictator of results, not however many reps you do. So I'm going to come back and touch on this later on in the podcast, but podcast number 214 is a training podcast titled Understanding Rep Ranges and Expected Results, and it'll teach you that rep ranges are actually based off of time under tension. When they did studies with controlled time under tension, they found that they got certain muscular responses at different times of tension, and then they just estimated a rep range that was similar to that because it was easier for people to count reps than it was for them to count seconds. What I would do is I would set up a stopwatch feature on my phone, because most people have their phones with them. You could actually just take a stopwatch to the gym if you want, and you could kind of time your set. So time it for 30 seconds, and then whenever the beeper goes off, you'll say, okay, I got 9 reps in, or I got 14 reps in. So that lets me know if I'm around that number plus or minus a little bit, then I'm probably within that 20 to 40 second range. So that's what I've done for clients, and I've done it for myself, just to time sets to see what is a common rep range. You might think, well, I'm going to do 10 reps, but if you do 10 reps in 10 seconds, if you're a fast mover, that's not going to work well. It's not going to get you under that proper time under tension range. So even though you did the reps you thought were related to your desired outcome, you didn't have the time under tension that was related to that. Okay, all of that. So when we're doing priming pre-exhaust, the benefits are improved mind-muscle connection, increased target muscle fiber recruitment. We do 2 to 4 sets of 20 to 40 seconds of time under tension. The cues you want to think of while doing these working sets is to have no momentum. None. You should, if somebody said stop, you'd be able to stop exactly where you were without any oh crap, let me slow the weight down so I can stop. No, you should be under control the entire time. What I try to think of is I think of the target muscle squeezing and stretching independent of what implement I'm using. If I have a cable handle, a machine handle, a dumbbell, whatever, if I'm doing leg extensions, there's a pad on my ankle, leg curls, there's a pad on the other side of my ankle. Whatever the implement is, I'm not focusing on that. I'm thinking of the targeted muscle I'm trying to squeeze and flex, and then slowly stretch. Squeeze and flex, slowly stretch. So I'm focusing on what the muscle is doing, not the implement that I'm moving. Okay? And like I said, to learn more about that, you would listen to podcast 334. Now, once you have your priming pre-exhaust exercise or working sets in, you now want to move into strength progression. This is the next intensity. So the title is Set Intensity Sequence. So the first intensity you want to use is priming and pre-exhaust. The second intensity you want to use is strength progression. The idea of this is you're going to get shear force damage on the muscle fibers. You're actually literally going to have something so heavy that it's tearing the muscles apart, which is a good thing, at a micro level. And it's going to help you increase future volume and intensity capacity. What this means is you're going to build your body's ability to handle more weight, more, not necessarily working sets, because you don't want to just continue to add working sets forever and all of a sudden be in the gym for 4 hours. But you're going to increase your body's ability to add more weight and add more intensity over time, so that way you can continue to push the body to progress without having to spend longer and longer time in the gym. For these sets, we usually look for 2 to 4 working sets, somewhere between 10 to 20 seconds of time under tension. Sometimes you might, do a bunch of warm-up technique stuff and then do one top set, especially if somebody's new to that movement or new to this type of intensity. You might only do one top set, see how they progress from there. Maybe somebody, if they're, an advanced athlete, we might do 1 or 2 warm-ups. Actually, I was just training with somebody the other day, and for chest presses, I did 1 set of 50s for 10 reps, and then we just went right to our top weight, and we did 5 sets of 10 reps at our top weight. So the 2 to 4 sets is more so just hey, here's a ballpark. Be somewhere around here. Most people are going to need 2 to 4 working sets, somewhere between 10 to 20 seconds of time under tension. The cues you want to think of when performing strength intensity is to maintain safe technique. It's more important than to leave a rep in the tank, as they say, where you say, I stop at 4, but maybe I could have done 5, but I feel like that might have been questionable. Maybe it wouldn't have been good quality. Maybe I could have got hurt. So I'm just going to do 4. It's better to leave a rep in the tank, or to say, I think I could do 200 pounds, but 180 I think sounds safer. I'll just move a little bit slower and make it harder. It's better to let go of a rep or let go of 5 to 10 pounds and maintain safe technique, because these are going to be very heavy weights since you're only doing 10 to 20 seconds of time or attention. If you're worried about, did I get enough reps? Did I get enough weight? Do an extra working set instead. Don't risk injury. It's better to miss 5% of what you could have done in one workout and then just keep coming into the gym more and more and more, rather than to go 5% over, get injured, and all of a sudden you miss a month. Now, that's easier to say as the coach than it is as the athlete. I know that. But it's still true. And then the other cue you want to think of is to focus on efficiency of movement. You want the movement to feel very efficient, very smooth. You're just trying to say, how can I blend all the muscles involved and move maximal weight load while staying safe? That's the focus. We have a podcast, number 1644. It's a training podcast titled Blending Proper Technique with Full Intensity. So we have a podcast that can help understand this to a greater degree. And again, that's podcast 1644. It's a training podcast titled Blending Proper Technique with Full Intensity. So that's your second kind of intensity sequence. So you're going to start with an exercise or working sets that are priming / pre-exhaust. Once you complete that, you're going to move to working sets that are a strength focus, whether that's the same exercise or whether you move to a new exercise, but you're going to do the priming pre-exhaust first, you're going to do the strength progression second. Then you're going to go to the third one is an intensity progression. This is different. So we said in the second one, we're trying to progress strength. We're trying to eventually be able to lift heavier weights. The third thing we're focusing on, intensity progression, is trying to be able to tolerate greater intensity. We're trying to push past our current comfort zone. You want to stay safe. And I'm going to give you, examples of how you can do this with special techniques. But the idea is to get uncomfortable, get uncomfortably uncomfortable. Try to push to a new level of intensity that you didn't know you could do. That's where you do that in this part of the workout. So the idea of this, since we're going to do longer time under tension, the benefit is you get kind of a metabolic damage, kind of a pump effect damage on the muscles, and that can help create change, growth if you're eating properly. And it helps increase volume and intensity tolerance, which allows you to make harder and harder workouts without being in the gym longer to continue to progress, through the future. The parameters for this, typically your working sets are going to be lower. So we might only do 1 or 2 working sets. Every once, though, I might have somebody do a third if we just practice the first one. But typically it's lower working sets, 1 to 2 working sets. And you're going to aim for 30 to 60 seconds of time under tension in total. Means an accumulation. What in the world do I mean by that? Well, to push your intensity, we can use things that are called intensity techniques. You may have heard things called rest pause, or drop sets, or a compounding circuit. You can go to our YouTube channel, Brutal Iron Gym, on YouTube, and you can search, just type in like Brutal Iron Gym rest pause or Brutal Iron Gym drop sets, and you'll find some videos that I did teaching those things. And we have podcast 1518, which is a training podcast titled Intensity Techniques and Progressive Set Schemes. So you can listen to that podcast, learn more about these techniques. But with rest pause, for example, you might do a bout of effort. Maybe you do a set of 10. You rest the weight, you pause just for like 10 seconds, then you get the weight back into position, you crank out a couple more reps, maybe 3 to 5 reps. So the 30 to 60 seconds of time under tension in total means if I combine the first effort of 10 reps plus the additional effort of 3 to 5 reps, am I within that 30 to 60 seconds of time under tension? Maybe I do a drop set. Maybe I do 10 reps with 40s, then 10 reps with 30s, then 5 reps with 25s. If I add up all of those efforts, do they add up between 30 to 60 seconds? So that's the idea of that 30 to 60 seconds of time under tension in total, meaning the accumulated time using those techniques. And again, 3 that I like to use are rest pause, drop sets, and compounding circuits. What compounding circuits means are just exercises back-to-back that use that same targeted muscle. Usually one is a compound and one is an isolation. We'll flip the order. Sometimes I'll have somebody do like chest flies into chest presses. I might have somebody do underhand grip pull-ups into standing bicep curls. So I'll play with it. Sometimes the bigger compound movement is first, sometimes it's second. Just kind of depends on what we're feeling that day. The idea is just to play around with it and have fun. Just kind of find what works for you. So the cues when you're doing the intensity progression type of sets is to maintain target muscle focus. Make sure your technique is good enough that the intended muscle is actually still doing the work, but push beyond your comfort zone. Get uncomfortably uncomfortable. Okay? Then the last intensity we want to progress to, whether we move to a new exercise, whether we're using the same exercise, but we want to do what's called finishing sets. It's not really like a fancy name to it. I'm just kind of naming it. But it's not like a technical name, just finishing sets. The idea here is we want to go back to kind of getting away from super heavy weight. We want to get away from that crazy intensity. We want to go back to what's called straight sets and just kind of feel the muscle again before we leave. One of the conversations we had with the client was we related it back to Mortal Kombat, where at the end of the fight, the person's like waving, they're dizzy, and they get the command, finish him, So we were saying this is the finish him moment. So the muscle's zonked, it's dead, it's waving around, it's waving the white flag, it's almost done, and then you get that finish him, kind of moment. So that's the idea. When we want to improve mind-muscle connection, we want to get a complete and total exhaustion of all muscle fibers. The parameters for this are 2 to 4 sets of 20 to 60 seconds of time under tension. Huge range of 20 to 60 seconds. Typically, the higher number of sets, I'll do lower time under tension. So I might do 4 sets of 20 seconds. If I do a lower set count, I might do a higher time under tension, so maybe 2 sets of 60. So typically, if the time under tension goes up, I want the number of sets to go down and vice versa. And this depends on strength level, depends on joint strength tolerance. If I have somebody who's weaker, we'll tend to do lower time under tension so I can maintain heavier weight load on them. If I have somebody who's very strong, we already have done a lot of joint stress and muscle stress, so I tend to do lighter weights and higher time under tension. The cues for this is to maintain target muscle focus and make sure that you eliminate kind of like helping muscles or helping positions. You want to make sure you truly isolate out whatever is left of that target muscle. To learn kind of a little bit more that can help you decide whether you want 20 versus 40 versus 60 seconds of time retention, we have that podcast 214 we talked about. It's a training podcast titled Understanding Rep Ranges and Expected Results. You can see which of the results you want more of, so then spend some extra time in that time under tension range. So that's the progression. The first exercise or the first focus is priming pre-exhaust. Then you go into your strength-based work, then your intensity progression work, and then your finishing sets. That's how you want to manage intensity sequence throughout a workout. I have 3 additional points I want to make before we wrap this up. Is podcast number 338. It's a training podcast titled How Your Strength Affects How You Should Train. The stronger a person is versus the weaker a person is will change a lot about the working sets and the time under tension that we use per working set. It's important to understand that so that you don't beat the crap out of your strongest clients or yourself, and you don't undertrain your weakest clients or yourself, to make sure you have the proper set count, proper intensity, time under tension intensity, depending on strength levels. Then we have podcast number 220, which is a training podcast titled Muscle Intention versus Movement Intention. And this is important to know because in almost all of the exercises, we're going to be using muscle intention, but in the strength progression sets, we're going to be using movement intention. It's very important to understand the difference. And then the last thing I'll say is the whole idea of this is just to give you a starting point. And then just personalize based on kind of what works best for you. Maybe you like the priming pre-exhaust, then you like the intensity progression, then the strength. Maybe you want to switch around, maybe you go back and forth. Maybe you want to sequence these like where you do a circuit. Maybe you do a superset. There's just so much you can do with personalization to this that I want to encourage you to go ahead and do that. So if you try this the way that we have it written, and what I mean by written is what I said in the podcast. And then also I'm going to make a handout and make it publicly available on our website. So if you go to www.brutalirongym.com, we have a page called Free Program Examples. If you click on that, at the very top we have Conceptual Program Examples. And we talk about that a conceptual program provides a workout template that can be used to create both personalized and limitless workout variations while providing a consistent, proven workout structure to ensure the best results. I have on there already a conceptual programming document for a chest workout template for growth. I'm going to be adding today's content where we're going to talk about set intensity sequence. I'm going to be adding everything I've talked about in the podcast on the website. You'll be able to print that document. You can click on all the links to all the podcasts I've mentioned. So it's all on the website. I probably should have told you that at the beginning. I'm sorry about that. So if you were taking notes, good for you. If you hadn't taken notes yet, they're already done. I apologize if somebody was trying to take notes. But we have that on our website. By the time you listen to this podcast, I'll be trying to put that up on the website, which I believe will be a Monday. So it'll be up there. I'll get it up there at least by the end of the day on Monday sometime. But I want to be able to just kind of provide this type of content. I realize that for some people this might be too complex. Maybe this is just too much. But for a lot of people, this isn't. This is the stuff they want to know. Over half of my clients are personal trainers, which I am insanely blessed and very happy and excited about that. And we often talk about this kind of stuff. So I want to continue to make this available to where we're not only talking about here's a good workout, but why is it a good workout? And how can I create a good workout for myself, for my clients, and any of my clients? So that's the idea of conceptual programming. Okay, I hope this was helpful. Again, check out the website for the printout of this. If you guys like this, or girls, like guys and girls, sorry. If you like this type of content, let me know. My email is brutalirongym@gmail.com. I'd be happy to continue to make more conceptual programming concepts and podcasts and handouts. If you shoot me a message, just let me know what you want to learn more about. I'll continue to make this stuff. I just want to continue to give back. I've been super blessed. I love getting to work with everybody. I love doing one-on-one stuff, so I'm really enjoying working with my one-on-one clients. I have people in 7 different countries. Over half are personal trainers. I absolutely love it. Truly blessed. So I want to continue to give back as much free stuff as I can squeak out the time to do. But I hope that you feel encouraged to always reach out and let me know what you would like to know. Okay. If you like our podcast, please share the podcast. If you like the podcast, please consider donating to support it, which you can do on our website. And if you like the information we share in our podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels. You can find us and follow us on the name Brutal Iron Gym on Instagram and YouTube. Awesome. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.